What's going on, everybody? This is Paul from Boosted Films coming at you with a how-to video redo, basically. So I made this how-to video about 10 years ago, believe it or not, about removing an ACD transfer case from a EVO 8 or EVO 9. And the audio on this video it's just horrible. It's really hard to hear me, and I do a lot of mumbling, and I don't, personally, I probably haven't gotten that much better at actually public speaking like this, but the audio quality itself should be better in this one, and it should be easier to kind of understand a bit about what I'm saying. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to cut back and forth a little bit between some old footage of me removing this ACD transfer case from an 05 EVO 8, but then I'm also going to splice in some video of me removing actually what was my transmission from my 03 EVO that has a non-ACD transfer case. So I'm going to cut in shots from that just because it's going to be higher quality and a lot of the procedural stuff is the same. So first things first, what we're looking at right now is basically just underneath this 05 EVO 8. I'm draining the fluid from the transmission, and you can just kind of see what things look like underneath the car. We got cross members, we got exhaust we need to remove, the transfer case, stuff like that. And now we're going to cut to what it would basically be like with working on this on the floor. And as you can see, I have my EVO up on jack stands here. And one of the main goals you'll have after you remove your wheels is really just to get the CV shafts or those half shafts out of the car. So again, since I was doing other stuff at the same time when I was filming this, I removed a lot more than I had to. Your main goal, if you're just trying to get your transfer case out, is really to just get those CV shafts out. And all you should have to do for that is kind of pop out your lower ball joints, maybe your sway bar links. So here you can see I'm working on, the lower ball joint. And that's about it. Whatever you need to do, the least amount of work you're going to make for yourself, just try to get those CV shafts out of the car. And you're going to see this video cut a little bit over, to a lot of other stuff removed. Again, hopefully that you won't have to, but it should also make it easier for you to view everything. So hopefully that'll be good. And now when it comes to removing these CV shafts, you don't just want to grab on them and yank them out. You're going to need a pry bar or a big screwdriver to kind of try to, pop them out of place. And usually once you give them a good hit, they should kind of pop free, and then you should be able to pull them out the rest of the way. And you're going to have wanted to drain the fluid from your transmission before you pull these CV shafts out, because otherwise it will leak. And of course, since you're removing your transfer case, I would drain the fluid in your transfer case as well before removing it. So after we've removed the CV shaft from the driver's side, you're going to want to do the same thing on the passenger side. Again, here I removed way more than you should have to. Remove the least amount of things that you can. The ball joint is what I would recommend, that lower ball joint. Obviously that can be hard to get out sometimes as well. Sometimes you might have to take a hammer and kind of hit around the area that holds that ball joint in to kind of break that free as well. But then we're going to do the same thing on this side. We're going to pop out that CV shaft and get that out of the way. And next we're just cutting to this old footage, like I said, from 10 years ago, where I again removed more stuff than I needed to. And because of the way I removed, the suspension, I needed to get a front end alignment after and everything else. So there is always more than one way to do this, but hopefully my voiceover here is kind of giving you enough information to explain to you, what you should remove and what you shouldn't have to remove. So this is one of the most tricky parts about this job, is removing this intermediate shaft here. And what you kind of need to do for this is to use a slide hammer or a chain of some sort. You just kind of need something to pull this shaft out. It's got a clip on it that kind of holds it in place, and you need to get that clip to just pull free. So I showed this in my transmission video. I have a dent puller here that I kind of modified to make work. Or if you have access to a slide hammer, that should be the best tool to use for this. But either way, you're going to need something to pull this intermediate shaft out of the transfer case. This pretty much holds the transfer case to the transmission. Next, we're going back under the car 10 years ago, and I'm just removing these cross member bars. So you're going to have to remove those, and anything else that's kind of in the way of your exhaust, you're going to have to get your downpipe out of the way, and you're going to have to get the front cross member out of the way as well. Now, when I listened to the audio of this video from 10 years ago, I said I loosened a couple of bolts holding the subframe. There's a bolt on each side. I loosened those to lower the subframe to get this transfer case out. I don't think you have to actually do that if you remove the rear motor mount. I'm just mentioning this now because I don't have as much video footage of that later, near the end of this video. But the real tricky part about this job, as far as getting the transfer case in and out, is just being able to move your whole engine and transmission either forward enough so you can kind of squeeze in that transfer case, squeeze it in or out. Kind of moving it how you need it to squeeze it in there can be tricky. So just kind of mentioning that ahead of time here, since that is again a tricky part of doing this job. And now you can see that I did remove my downpipe from my exhaust. And then also what I'm going to do here is just remove this piece of the drive shaft. I would recommend just putting a mark on that drive shaft so you can put it back in the same way you took it out. And then remove the 4 bolts holding that piece of the drive shaft in place, and then pull it out. So now we're going to cut back to a little better quality footage of removing this, front motor mount and this cross member bar that goes and holds it in place as well. So you're going to want to remove the bolts that hold that in place. There's going to be 2 in front and 1 in the back. So the next thing we're going to want to do is remove the tailstock piece from this transfer case. You will not be able to get the transfer case in and out without removing this piece. It just kind of helps, give you a bit more room when you're trying to squeeze things into an area where there's really not a lot of room to work. So next we're going to remove the 3 bolts, the 3 smaller bolts that are on the bottom side of the transfer case. We're going to loosen those up. And then there are going to be 3 more bolts on the top. I believe there's only 3 above the transfer case that you're going to have to remove as well. Now the difference here between the ACD and the non-ACD transfer case is that the ACD transfer case does have a line that runs fluid from the ACD pump to the transfer case. So you're going to have to remove that line before you'll be able to remove the bolts holding the transfer case in place. So right here I'm just trying to zoom in from this old footage. As you can see, I have a socket on that bolt, and of course I need to remove that bolt before I could get to the other bolts holding the transfer case in place. And now we're just cutting back to more current footage with my EVO 8 where I removed the bolts. You can see I have a socket on them, and this is a view from above the car coming in through the engine bay, and you can see me loosening up the bolts that hold the transfer case to the transmission. And there's also one kind of sneaky bolt that's a little bit hard to see that I'm trying to zoom in here. And also hopefully you can kind of get a feel, if you keep looking and notice the difference, you can see a bit of a difference between an ACD transfer case and a non-ACD transfer case. That cover on the side that kind of faces the passenger side of the vehicle definitely looks a lot different for an ACD transfer case versus a non-ACD transfer case. And next you can see I am on the ground again. This is when I was just pulling my transfer case away from my transmission so I could remove my transmission. Again, if I wanted to remove my transfer case, my downpipe would no longer be there. That would be removed, and the tailstock would be removed, and other things. But again, for this video, when I was filming it, it was just to get my transmission out. But you can see you have to wiggle that transfer case a bit and kind of try and pull it away from the transmission. Now we're going back in time to 10 years ago when I was working on this ACD transfer case removal on the hoist, And what I did here is I kind of had a pry bar and I tried to kind of pry the whole engine and transmission assembly kind of forward. I had to rock it forward a bit to try to drop that transfer case out. This is not the easiest thing to do by yourself. It's certainly good to have someone there to help you with this if you can, just to get a bit more muscle. But you should be able to squeeze that transfer case through. And of course, be careful, this is a heavy item. And now you can see what this EVO looked like with no transfer case in place. And that's it. So if all you had to do was remove your transfer case, lucky you, because installing your transfer case can be a pain in the butt. So what you need to do is pay attention, if you're going to install a new transfer case, filling it with the correct fluid and filling it with the right amount of fluid can certainly be a bit tricky. I'm going to add a link in this video description about kind of how to properly fill your ACD or non-ACD transfer case. They are a bit tricky to do, but basically it's a bit tricky and it's something you want to make sure you get done right. So I also always just kind of recommend filling it, leaving it sit for a while, filling it again, keep filling it, and then also once you're kind of done with the job, drive the car around a little bit and then check your fluid again. There's also more information about bleeding your ACD pump. So if you're installing an ACD transfer case, you'll need to know more about actually bleeding your pump after you do this, just to make sure there's no air in the lines. So I'm going to link to more information about that in the video description as well. And this video here is from one of my earlier video blogs a couple years ago, just showing that I did install this non-ACD transfer case on the ground with this car and just showing you kind of how it was done from underneath. It is a bit of a pain in the butt again, but it's certainly doable. So that's it, guys. This is Paul from Boosted Films. Thank you so much for watching this update video. As always, reach out to me on any of the platforms you like to use, and hopefully you found this video helpful, and thanks so much for watching.